All right, we're in here with Benjamin Todd. Ben, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Glad you could come in. We actually didn't really have this planned until, a week ago we ran into each other at the mall.
Yeah. So we were at Opry Mills. My nephew needed some football cleats, so I went there with my sister. Very, very, very kind of embarrassing place to get seen
Yeah.
in general, to be at the mall. But it's funny. So that mall, there used to be roller coaster and a theme park there called Opryland.
Right.
Before they built that, I have memories from when I was 5 and 6 going there. They used to have the Hangman roller coaster. They used to set up this big talking Christmas tree. It was like 20 feet tall, and it had someone operating a voice on it, and like the mouth moved. And I remember when I was like 5 or 6, before they tore the park down and built the mall, I went up to the Christmas tree, and I was like, "Fuck you, fuck you." And the Christmas tree told on me to my grandma and grandpa, and I got in trouble. So that was my final goodbye to the Opryland Park. But it's funny, malls in general. But I probably hadn't been there since I was probably 10, buying football cleats of my own.
That's funny. No, my wife was bored that day. She said, I need to go to TJ Maxx and get some stuff. So I walked into TJ Maxx for about 2 seconds. Like, all right, I'm getting out of here. And I was just looking at my phone or something, and I heard Dylan. I looked up, and it was you. So it worked out great. I'm glad you was able to come in and sit down and talk, because you've had a lot of cool stuff going on. You want to, I guess we can go ahead and plug what you got going on and what you got coming up the pipeline.
I don't have a lot coming down the pipeline, I guess, from a PR or like that's been released perspective. Mm-hmm. But I have 3 records kind of in the chamber, ready to get in the studio.
Cool.
And do. So the one that I'm working on coming up soonest is a songwriter record. It's, I guess I'll talk about it here. I haven't said, I guess that's the point of doing this, right?
Yeah.
To
whatever you want it to be.
I'm like, I haven't told anyone yet. It's like, that's what we're here to do. So right now, the plan for this record, originally I had stated to the public, I asked the public online, I was like, do you want a solo record with just me on it and guitar, or do you want the full band on this next songwriter record? And overwhelmingly, people said solo.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful. And I have no problem facilitating and doing and offering. But I really enjoy making records with the full band, and also I don't want to cut out the full potential of a song.
Right.
There's something about getting in the studio and the magic that comes with that. And something being built and happening that transforms a song in a way that you didn't think possible. I also understand that there's a complete power in just you and a guitar. So taking after a couple other people, but doing it in my own way slightly. Recently with like Tyler Childers releasing, what was the last record?
Rustin' in the Rain.
Yes, the way he did the 3 versions.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently Connor Burst has done this at different points in time with Bright Eyes, slightly different genre and style. But I'm planning on setting this record as 20 tracks. The first 10 tracks are going to be 10 songs with a full band, and then the second 20 will be the same songs but me solo.
Okay, I got you.
And I think it'll scratch the itch on both sides. It's like no one can complain. It's like the radio folks who want something that they can put on the air that works in the flow of a radio show. I understand those solo records. It's harder. The individual consumer likes it, but
yeah. Well, that's really cool that you're doing that to appease both sides, because it's like you said, obviously the full production, full band, great for the radio. But there is something about just hearing a fellow with his guitar with the songs that he wrote that's just, it's some magic that happens there whenever it's just the guy or girl singing what they wrote from the heart with just the guitar. So
Yeah.
that's going to be great.
I think I just saw something on a Charles Wesley Godwin release where like a bunch of fans. It was, I can't remember what it was, but it was some posting with one of the tracks off his latest record, and like 6 different people had commented like, where's the solo version of this, blah blah blah. And it's like, he's just made these solo versions on Instagram,
right,
like for a reel or whatever. But it's funny how immediately personally attached people become with that direct solo just performance.
Yeah. Can't wait for that. That's going to be great. And do you know what the title of the album's going to be, or when it's going to drop? Or
it's going to be titled "My Pride," which is a track off the record. Mm-hmm. Which I don't always do that either. I don't always title records off of any particular track on the album. It's typically from like one line in the album or something like that.
I got you.
But I don't have a particular release plan right now. I have a bunch of things in the air in my personal life. Last year was crazy. We did 2 major album releases. I think 3 singles besides that, if you include the Jesse Daniels releases.
Yeah.
Or Jesse Daniel releases. Sorry. It is not Jesse Daniels. You got to get that right.
Common mistake.
Yeah, I
find myself doing it all the time.
I know, but like you gotta think how much of a pain in the ass it'd have to be to constantly be correcting people on your last name.
Those were great songs, by the way, that you and Jesse did together.
Yes, and that came together. It was just magic. We had no formal. I don't know. We had no formal plan to do it. We just kind of became friends. Started talking to each other back and forth. I showed up to a show here in Nashville one time and met him and Jody, and it just kind of clicked. Like it just, when you meet someone, you're like, oh, you've got the same hunger, you've got the same fierceness. We got, like, you understand what I understand about the world. We view the world the same way.
Y'all didn't run into each other at the food court in the mall?
No. No.
I thought maybe that was your game. Maybe you went to the mall and just waited.
No, we actually met by a dumpster off of 8th Avenue. Okay, there's a venue by the dumpster. Mm. But we still met by a dumpster. And then we started talking back and forth, and I was on tour and he was on tour, and I got that. I wrote the first verse and the chorus to. What the fuck is this song called? I'm so bad with song titles, so my own people will be like, "Hey, can you play this song?" I was like, "Did I write that song?"
That's funny.
Yeah, you wrote that song. Turn the Devil Away. Mm-hmm. So I wrote that first verse and that chorus, and I sent it to him. And then within literally it was 30 minutes, he sent me back, a phone recording of that second chorus, and I was like, I couldn't have written that better.
Yeah.
I couldn't have written anything remotely better for that. And it kind of just took off from there. And we both have kind of recovery stories, so that imprints you a certain way when you've been deep in addiction to hard drugs, especially.
Right.
So yeah, there's something that we both understand, and Turn the Devil Away was the perfect expression of that. And me and Jesse still talk just about try to about every week, and I love him dearly.
Yeah, it was great. Any plans of doing any shows together in the upcoming future?
He would be pretty damn near the top of the list. It is always, there are so many logistical things that I love bringing up, but no one's, it's not very interesting to talk about as far as the complications with everything in our industry.
Yeah.
Like everyone's like, why don't you do this? Like, why don't you play banjo on stage? It's like, you try to fucking tune a banjo on stage.
Yeah.
It's like a banjo is not easy to tune anytime. It's the most finicky instrument to mic or DI. It's like, it's a pain in the ass. I don't know how anyone does it successfully. But having two bands, it is complicated. But
right.
after rolling those 4 shows, I will absolutely be on the road with Jesse Daniel again. But in general, my plans for getting back on the road are very much at a standstill. I have absolutely nothing on the books. I do not have a crew. I do not have a band. I'm not actively looking for one. I'm not actively seeking out anything particular. If a major player in our industry, and this is pretty much what I've told management, if a major player in our industry knocks on our door, let me know. Beyond that, I'm not planning on booking anything for this year. There might be something coming in the fall of 2025 or the winter. I'm talking about doing an in the round session, which has been on my heart for years and years. Just like me and 2 other songwriters do like a 2 or 3 hour format.
Mm-hmm.
Each of us do 2 songs, swap it at the end of the rotation of 3 people. So every 6 songs, we take a question from the crowd.
Yeah.
I would assume each of us taking a question from the crowd and just running that for 2 to 3 hours, and that being a show format. I think it's something that the public would really be hungry for. It doesn't seem to be represented on like a national touring scale either. Like
right.
You see this stuff here in Nashville where, people will do a pop-up at Loveless Cafe or something like that.
Yeah.
But you don't see people, and maybe I'm blind to it, maybe people are doing this, but just going on tour, 3 songwriters, running an entire tour that way.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you see that? Have you seen that?
No. It's an interesting concept. That'll be really cool.
Well, it used to be fairly common.
Yeah. You don't see a whole lot of that anymore, so that's good to hear. Definitely good to hear. A while ago, before the cameras were rolling, you and I were sitting and talking, and we was waiting on my cornbread to get done so we could do this podcast, and you blew my mind. You said that when you were younger, you was babysitted by the legendary Dallas Frasier. Mm-hmm. That's pretty incredible for those of you who are listening. If you don't know, you live under a rock, but Dallas Frasier wrote Elvira and a billion other hits for people through the year. One of the greatest songwriters of all time, and I mean that. I'll stand and say that.
Well, to me, he was a deacon at Hendersonville Chapel in Hendersonville, Tennessee, in Sumner County, and him and my grandfather were very good friends, and that's just how. I don't think that my story is unique. It's obviously like it's unique in the sense that I'm talking about one particular person in one particular church. But that's the one thing that's kind of neat about Nashville in general. Anyone that lived here and grew up here, there's a what's the word? Desensitized.
Uh-huh.
And that's one of the reasons Nashville is nice. That's one of the reasons that artists live here, because it's kind of a cyclical thing. You can be a famous person here in Nashville and walk around, and there's kind of just a code of conduct. It's like, yeah, people will recognize you, but generally people like Alan Jackson used to live down the road in Hendersonville. Right. And it was like he would be all over town. He didn't hide himself.
Yeah. There's kind of a general social respect that's given
to people who are in the public light here. So, it's easier to be a public figure just acting like a normal person here in Nashville. And also just the general public, you get desensitized to it because you see this stuff all the time. But I think just about anyone who grew up here probably has stories similar to that.
When you were that young, were you aware of who Dallas was at all?
Not at all. Absolutely not even remotely. I remember one day the neighbors' cows got out, and I remember they were having home group. And it's hard to describe without describing the whole view of the house that I kind of grew up in. But it's basically like we lived on frontage property that was sold, and it was just cattle pasture around it. And I remember, so the yard was all of a sudden filled with the cows that were usually on the other side of the fence. Typical rural problem. But I remember Dallas going out there and like giving these crazy cattle yips to the cows. I remember watching him do that. Trying to get the cows like away from, because like we didn't have like a big parking lot, at the house, so people had to park in the yard and the cows were kind of in the way. It was but no, and then again, I don't even know. I guess I myself didn't realize how much the general public knew about Dallas until he passed.
Right.
Because I just, there's so many songwriters. It's like the guy who gave me my first guitar, Rick West. He had written, was his real name Eric Tinglich. My best friend was Christian Tinglich growing up. He gave me my first guitars. He had done all this, and then later on in life, I realized he'd written like 4 number 1 hits for George Strait. He had toured with Gordon Lightfoot and Townes Van Zandt and Guy Clark back in the day. And he was kind of my musical mentor growing up. Who was I just talking to about what artist and how I found them? Who in the world was it? Damn it. It wasn't Jim Ringer. It was some obscure artist. And someone was like, how did you even hear about that? Oh, no. It was Ballad of Spider John, Willis Allen Ramsey. And my buddy got that original. He had an original pressing of that record. And we were listening to it, and I was like, I guess I had a concerned look on my face, which is how I look when I'm processing something. I'm like, and he was like, have you not heard this record before? And I was like, I heard this record when I was like 13 or 14.
Yeah. I
was like, I don't remember it. It's not, there's some tracks on that record, that A-side, I was like, this is very good. But, so that was the face I was making. I was like, what the hell is he talking about? Some Wombat song or something. But he used to just come up from downstairs. He was, wrote number 1 hits for George Strait.
Right.
But, he lived in Hendersonville, Tennessee, was my best friend's dad. And he would just throw us records, Guy Clark records, Townes records. And, we were like 13, 14, 15. And we'd put them on and be like, yeah, it's pretty good. Huh. Waiting Around to Die, that's kind of cool, Like before all this shit was popular. Yeah. It was really my generation that, how old are you again?
31.
31? I'm 34. So we're still same generation generally. Yeah. But, it was our generation that really brought that stuff to light.
Yeah.
Around, I'd say 2010 was sort of the big spike of that, where everyone was like, oh, Heartworn Highways, Townes Van Zandt, Guy Clark. But it was funny because I had listened and processed all of that so much in my youth. It was strange watching everyone become enveloped with it, years and years later. And obviously there was like, in my youth, there was a cocky shittiness about it.
Yeah.
Because you always want to keep everything to you.
Yeah.
Like, I found this really cool private thing.
Yeah.
And the internet destroyed all that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. So you brought up Jim Ringer. You cut one of Jim's songs.
Yes.
Here recently.
Hubbardsville Story.
Hubbardsville Story. Yeah. So what's the story behind that? How'd you get to know Jim and cut that song?
That was another record toss from the basement. His dad lived in the basement, so that's how I refer to it in my mind all the time, because you could hear him screaming up the basement stairs when we would smoke too much weed in there. He didn't care we were smoking weed; he just didn't want to be burned out downstairs.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jim Ringer was another. And the only person I've ever met who knew about Jim Ringer, which obviously this has changed a lot as internet's come about. Mm-hmm. The first person I ever met in my life who knew who Jim Ringer was before I introduced them to him was Riley Downing from the Deslons. He's the only person. I was talking to him years ago, and I brought up Jim Ringer, and I was like, "You know who Jim Ringer is?" Type of thing. But that's where that came to me. So much of my foundational impressions with music came from when I was not even aware they were being made.
Right.
It's like kind of had a guardian angel over me, which he wasn't. He was not a perfect man, but he was one of my mentors. He passed 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I remember he gave me my first guitar when I was 13, 14. And he told me and my buddy Christian, his son, he's like, "You got to go downtown, you got to play on the street, you got to make money to pay me back." These guitars were, I think they were, if I remember correctly, they were around $300 each. And one thing I'm proudest of, after all those years that passed, I paid him back. I think the year he died, I finally was like, "You know what? I never paid you back for that guitar. I've got to get that to you." And I got him paid back, but that was a really good debt to get off my chest.
Yeah.
I've got a couple other friends that didn't pay that debt back, because he would do that for pretty much anyone that came through town. He'd hand a guitar and go make money. Of course, we didn't. We went downtown and made money and bought pills and meth and booze with it.
Yeah.
Instead, which was more easily available.
Right.
So.
Well, another thing that you surprised me with Dallas Frasier, but another thing that really interests me about your younger days is the train hopping. Mm-hmm. And I told Dylan Holiday, who I got to give him his flowers, he's the one that introduced me to Jim Ringer. But
Dylan Holiday, who was?
You probably know him. He does country music history stuff similar to what I do. He's a good friend of mine. But and he's a big fan of yours. So
well, don't show that part where I didn't know who it was. No, I'm joking.
No, I told him one day we were talking. I said, I'm just really intrigued with this whole train hopping thing, because it was a big part of the past. You hear Merle singing about it a lot, and all these hobo songs and stuff. And I think Merle's last song that he had writing credit on, he co-wrote with Sturgill, which was Hobo Cartoon. And I've just always been intrigued with the train hopping thing. And I told Holiday, I said, what would be awesome is if we went and hopped some trains and we documented it, we could get Benjamin Todd involved. It would be so cool. And he's like, "We can't do that." I said, "Why?" He said, "We'll get arrested." I said, "Is it illegal to hop a train?" He said, "I think so." I said, "Well, I guess that's out the window, but it's a cool idea."
Well, you got to get in line. There's a bunch of people that want to go ride with me. Mike Venata. You'll get your ride too. That's a guy from Western as Fuck.
Uh-huh.
Mike has been begging me for a couple of years. Well, actually, I'm not going to tell our business, but Mike, we'll get on a train sometime.
There you go.
But yeah, I mean, the way that my childhood went, people are always like, "How'd you get into riding trains?" And I'm like, I don't know. That's just what you did. The culture that I was a part of, I was ingrained in the transient punk scene, and from the time I was 13, it was like the punks who came in town off the railroad. It was like I'd flock to them. Some of my first memories was going under Church Street Bridge and hanging out with people passing through town. Almost got killed a couple times. Almost went to jail a couple times. Well, I did go to jail a couple times, but not till later in life here in Davidson County. But I met Abby the Spoon Lady. I don't know how close proximity that is to you, but she's sort of a folk music historian and also public figure, and plays the spoons
right
online. She's internationally recognized. But I met her under Church Street Bridge when I was 14, and her boyfriend at the time, almost killed me, and the cops showed up. I guess kind of saved me. But that's just what you did. You got old enough to leave, basically, which I left starting around 16 and really left at 17. But basically, you got old enough where the cops wouldn't just fuck with you all the time. You had to look at least like, which, I mean, it's still, I was 17 on the other side of the country. I remember in Idaho, I got pulled over once, and I was 17, and cop was like, what the hell are you doing here? And I had my birth certificate. That's all I had. It was like a torn up, crinkled birth certificate. They were like, we got to call someone in your family. And I was like, we're not calling anybody in my family. I was like, they're not doing anything about me being here. So
yeah,
I remember they drove me to the Greyhound station in Boise. They bought me a ticket because they wanted me to get out of the jurisdiction. They took me to Billings. Then when I was 17, I hitchhiked the longest hitchhike of my life. It was from Billings, Montana to Rapid City, South Dakota. That's where my wife is from. I needed to get to her.
Uh-huh.
She was out of she went to college during that time, but she was off school for summertime, and I think that's about 700-800 miles. That was my longest hitchhike, and I lost my granddad's fedora that day. That's the only hat I've ever lost on the road. Only like beaver felt nice hat. My granddad was a coal miner in Brilliant, Alabama, and I had one of his fedoras. It's like one of the things I remember. Like 3 years later, I went back to that same truck stop exit. I had left it on top of a woman's car when I was getting in. She had a bunch of kids in the back. She was like a minivan. I put my hat on top of the car. Got in, got about 5 miles down the road. I was like, oh, I lost my hat, blah, blah, blah. Now, if I was who I am now, I would have been like, stop the vehicle. I'm walking back. I'm getting that fucking hat. Yeah. Like, I cannot believe. But hey, I was trying to get some booty that night. Yeah. That was what I was trying to
do. That's what's great about you, though, Ben, is there's a lot of people in the industry now who write songs that they didn't live. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. Creative mind's great, but there's just the level of authenticity that comes with someone like you who has lived these lives and then you put it into your music. It's incredible for the listener because you can hear it coming through the songs, and your story is a lot of heartache obviously involved in it and bad times, but it's like that old Chinese proverb. I'm sure you've heard Shia LaBeouf tell. It went viral a few years ago about it was a Chinese father back in the 1400s or something, and bad things kept happening and good things kept happening, and every time they would say something to the father, he would say, well, I don't know if that's good or bad. Like his son broke his leg. Well, I don't know if that's good or bad. And the point of it is, as time goes on, the things they thought were good turned out to be bad, and the things they thought were bad turned out to be good. So it's like all of these experiences and things that happen to us culminate into where we are today.
Yep.
And for you to be able to take all of that and pour it into music, I think is just fantastic, and why you've grown to where you are today.
Yeah, well, it's really scary. Well, I also have to preface why I just said that with, I had to do some inpatient, I don't know what you call it. I had to go to inpatient therapy, psychological help
Right.
Recently, and kind of because I don't think of everything that's happened to me just like anything that's happened in your life, or anyone the bad things. It's not like you don't wake up and dwell on
Right.
all the things, but I recently did that, and we did some digging into my past, and and wrote down this list of traumas that I've had over my life, and that was daunting. I didn't realize, but there's a lot of reasons why you're the way that you are and I'm the way that I am, and they generally have to do with your defense mechanisms. And I'm kind of paying the price for that now. So, at 27, I started the process of rebuilding my life. Before then, I was more or less a complete drug addict, maniac, violent, criminal-minded lunatic. And I have been rebuilding my life basically from the moment I quit the hard drugs, and then a couple years later realized I couldn't handle the booze anymore either. And now I'm in a place of recovery where I've cleaned up most everything in my life. I mentor and sponsor a few people at a time, generally. So I scratch that itch that way. But very recently, I got kind of stuck on my past.
Yeah.
And evaluating all the dark and terrible things that I did and that were done to me, and it's really daunting. Because there are a lot of things that are embedded in how I interact with the world around me, especially how I interact with other men, how I view people's general hierarchical space in the world, my sense of truth and my sense of justice, the sense of what you deserve and what I deserve and what we deserve if we're collectively working together, and my sense of gratitude, my sense of generosity, my sense like everything is so keyed in with my experience in life, and things that are really hard to explain to people. It's like you're in a you're walking a long hallway with someone behind a venue with a stagehand or something, and turn around real quick, but don't fucking walk that close to me. I was like, there's a reason why I do that. I can't explain it right now.
Yeah.
It's like, well, when you've been in fights, in situations where there's no one to break up the fight, you're under a bridge in the middle of nowhere. When you've been in when you've been in multiple fights where either you're going to be unconscious at the end of this, or the other person is, whatever the state of being is, it changes you, and it changes the trajectory of your life. It changes your psychology.
Right.
And same thing when you started using drugs and started using the needle, when you started watching people die, when you started when you live with the repercussions of those actions, and compounded with your contribution to people's death, it scars you in different ways. It's hard to
right.
It's hard to it's hard to unravel. So I've been kind of unraveling my whole past.
Well, I think that's a great thing, because as men, everybody has those traumas in their life, and as men, especially men from the South like we are, tend to bottle all that up and try to not think about it, and then it just comes back and bites you. You end up taking it out on the wrong people or whatever. So that's great to hear that you're working through that, and now the people can hear that you're working through that too. And I talked about this with T. Graham Brown a while back, who he was alcoholic for many years, and
you know that my first band was with T. Graham Brown's son.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Acme Brown. So the first band I was in, I faked my way. And sorry to interrupt your story.
Oh, you're good.
But T. Graham Brown, his son was a drummer in the band. Mm-hmm. I was 13 years old. It was a punk band. I told them that I could play bass. I'd never played any instrument my entire life. But luckily, bass is an easy instrument. Please don't shoot me, bassist. It is, though. But, yeah, so like, I just met T. Graham Brown, because I'd never met him. I may have when I was, like, 13. Uh-huh. But actually, he had just been inducted into the Opry Hall of Fame the week before I did my debut. So Acme was there, and then T. Graham Brown came in. I was like, I technically first played, an instrument in a commercial means at the Muse in, Nashville off Lafayette and Fourth. Under your graces. Mm-hmm. So it was full circle.
Yeah, that's really cool. T's a great guy. But he was kind of telling the same thing about, getting off the alcohol and stuff. And he said that he went to therapy and stuff. It was just a lot of mental trauma and stuff that he had to unpack that was holding him in those bad places.
Yeah.
So to hear y'all talk about that stuff, I think it's just great for the folks who are listening, who are going through that, because there are a lot of people who are. And I think it's a great encouragement for those people to think about doing things like that. Go talk about it. Go unpack it and get yourself in a position of a clearer mind. I think that's very important. So,
well, for me, I think a lot of people in general struggle with it, but I think men especially. I hadn't cried in like a year, and I would try to.
Yeah.
My body literally wouldn't let me, and it's not like that. I tell people that, and they're like, "Oh, well, there's some, you're doing that. You don't want to cry," and I'm like, "No, I'd be like begging myself. I'm like, I get like a tear or two, because you need like, just from an objective physiological perspective, your body needs to purge. Those glands need to purge.
Yeah.
Like it's necessary for you to grieve in order to let go, in order to open a ton of physiological, neurological things in your mind and your body. Mm-hmm. And my body, for like the last 4 years of my life, I have not been able to just grieve, even when I want to, even when I'm like begging the sky, like let me cry, like really weep, like cathartic,
Right.
And that's kind of the point that I was at before I had to go into the inpatient facility. But I got it all out. But now it's a can of worms. Once you open up stuff like that, it's like you got to continue to maintenance it.
Yeah.
But it opened my eyes to a lot of things. But also, this doing what we do as far as musicians and public figures and performers, this isn't good for anyone. And I tell all the people in this industry in general, especially the people that really just run things heavy, people that are on the road, it's like, okay, I did like 50, 60 dates last year, and that's pretty much my limit. I might crank it up to 80 dates in a year at some point in the next decade, maybe. But like that is nothing to Charlie Crockett. That is nothing to Sierra. That is nothing to so many people in this industry. They're running, 150 dates is a cheap year to them.
Wow.
Like my tolerance is like, I'm spent.
Yeah. I would be too.
But I think that lifestyle does that to anybody. I don't think you particularly need a bunch of traumatic experiences, screaming in every corner of your mind, in order for this experience to drive you that way. Because I think it really comes down to the symbolic vision of ourself. And I guess to get into Eastern philosophy, you already did. But, we have our way. We have our experience in life, our visceral, your five senses. And you have your spirit, your mind, body, and soul. We so often, in today's day and age, and especially if you grew up with social media, if you grew up with screens, it's like, I remember I was 22 when people started getting like smartphones. Like,
right.
Really,
right.
And you were probably
about 20.
Yeah. So like our formative years, we didn't have the screen. We didn't have, like, there was MySpace, but you had to go to a PC.
Yeah.
And sit there and whatever, and like that, like the
plug
world
into dial up.
Yeah. The world wasn't like enveloped around it. So like for people who grew up with the psychology that social media has created, it's this otherness. It is your vision of yourself is a reflection of yourself. It's like this is not who you are.
Right.
Just like what I see of you right now, that's not who you are.
Yeah.
Who you are is I can never know.
Right.
Just like who I am, no one can ever know. This is who I am. This experience, all the tangible things, and feeling, smelling. But when you get locked into that symbolic self, which is precisely what happens when you start running the gamut with a PR campaign and an album rollout and interviews, and everyone's always asking you about everything all the time, and you're constantly in persona mode, because that happens no matter what you do. You can't do 150 shows a year and not be able to. Howdy, folks. I'm Benjamin Todd. You have to develop the skill to be able to switch those things on and off, and sometimes it's harder to switch off than it is to switch on.
Yeah.
So I don't have any hope for our civilization. No, I'm joking. But I don't know if we keep running human psychology the way that we are, as far as allowing social media to take over the general psychology of man, and anyone who doesn't get back to their actual way. Because there are some people who are born in today's day and age that have existed in their symbolic self their entire life.
Right.
I was like, we at least know what the world was like before that symbolic vision of yourself took over for every individual around us.
Right.
We know what the old timers were like. We know what the old world was like. We remember back, before everyone had even flip phones.
Yeah.
And you would just go somewhere and no one could reach you, and that was the way that it was.
Yeah. I remember getting the first computer whenever we were kids. I think it come from Avon.
Yeah, but you had your encyclopedia.
Yep.
You sit there and you poke through every single lizard that ever existed everywhere in the entire world at the time.
Yep. Yeah. So you said you got sober around 2017?
Something like that. I'm also not. I feel bad that I don't remember precisely, just because that is a very. It's very important to other people who are sober.
Uh-huh.
Like pretty much everyone else that I know who's sober is like, this is the date. I'm 300 whatever years, but also my sobriety was very iffy. It's like my sobriety with hard drugs wasn't iffy, and by hard drugs I mean the needle. Mm-hmm. I still used cocaine, I think 2 years after that when I was drinking, like every now and then.
Yeah.
But no offense to anyone, if you use as many drugs as I have, cocaine's not a hard drug to me. Especially, and if you started using it at 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
But the booze is a little different because I quit, I think. Well, I actually know the day that I technically quit, but that was a real on and off thing. That was like the first month I quit. I fell off probably once a week. The first probably 6 months, and then the next 6 months I fell off once a month, and then the next year I fell off once every 2 months.
Yeah.
Very, very unpredictable. But I was living sober, so I still include that. But then some people in the sobriety community don't.
Right.
And it's like now, I haven't had a drink in, I don't know, a couple or a few years.
Yeah.
As far as like completely no alcohol, no drugs whatsoever.
Right.
I also used kratom for years. Well, I've never even said that on camera, whatever. But I used kratom for, I think, 5 years of my sobriety after being, a heroin addict back when you could get heroin. Now it's all fentanyl.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thankful that I got out of the game before fentanyl came around, or I'd probably be dead. But so I don't know if you're familiar with kratom at all.
Yeah, actually, a guy in our community, from what I've heard, he had a really severe addiction to the stuff, and he ended up dying. And they say that had a big part in why he died when he did. He was taking, like, from what I heard, a bottle a day. It was like 40 it was capsules, I guess, and he was that bad off on it that he was taking a whole bottle of it a day, and he ended up passing away.
Yeah, it's complicated with the kratom because we well, it's complicated with everything because you can't trust anyone who does the damn research on any of the medications or any of the fucking food in this country. But you also can't trust the people that want to sell you stuff that is not the FDA.
Right.
Either.
Yeah.
You can't fucking trust anybody.
Yeah.
So it's you have one camp that's like, the FDA hasn't approved that. It's like, yeah, the fucking FDA would approve cat food if they could figure out how to get it in your bloodstream if it was cheap enough and they could charge you enough for it.
Yeah.
It's like, you think they gave a shit about your health?
Yeah. Well, the reason I asked you about the year is because that was right around the time that your career like super skyrocketed, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I guess technically. I don't know what skyrocketed is, I guess. I don't know.
Like,
I didn't envision it I didn't live through that personally. Like,
right.
I didn't feel that happening.
Yeah.
But I'm happy that from the outside, it's always better. Whatever you think, it looked like wonderful. Fucking, if it looked better than it actually was, hell yeah.
I remember Using Again blowing up, and it was just everywhere. I'm sure to you, the artist, it's always years in the making and stuff. It's like my stuff. I'd been making videos and stuff for years, and then it was just like it almost blew up overnight.
Yeah.
But for me, I remember it was about back then that I saw Using Again pop up, and you had blown up everywhere. And so I was interested to know your perspective of how that time period was for you.
So that was a really dynamic time. Well, dynamic, I don't know. Everything's dynamic. It was a very, very dark time in my life. So I think it was 2 years before that, or a year and a half before that. I'm gonna write my memoir one day so that I actually have it's calculated. But Ashley is my wife, fiddle player, lost dog, for anyone who doesn't know. I don't know why the hell you're watching this if you don't know who I am. I guess they're watching it for you too. But we were split up. I had ruined our marriage. I had ruined my career, and that's when Benjamin Todd started. So it was kind of on me, bracing my heels back from a tough punch of life. Yeah. Which was, I'd been a terrible husband. I'd been a drug addict. I had been a criminal. I'd been a lunatic and an alcoholic for over a decade, and it all kind of came to a head. And she left. She took Van and my dog, which she deserved. She needed the dog and the van more than I did. And then I guess I commenced to doing that I Will Rise record, which literally that record is not. That's all one take, and it's not even trying. That's like, and I can hear that now, especially when I listen to it. It's like I was so depressed. Like we did that. I think we did that in like, I don't know, a 4-hour session or something.
Yeah.
It was just like me, first take. Like if I remember correctly, Dan a couple times was like, "Why don't we do another take of that?" And I was like, "I don't give a shit." I think Using Again was one of those where I was like, "I'm not doing it again." Literally just the most mid-grade performance I could possibly muster. But so I can't remember when things were exactly released, but it's funny because Using Again not only was sort of the inception of, I guess, the inception of my success, but it was also the beginning of Gyms on VHS actually, beginning to turn a corner and make money and taking things seriously. Because it's funny to think about now that I was the person that initiated this. I wonder if Tony would even remember this or agree with me. Anthony from Gyms on VHS. I remember we did that Using Again shoot. I remember I was living in Old Hickory. I was strung out. I think I banged the last of my black tar before I left. Headed to the studio, which was in where the fuck? I can't remember that district. Doesn't matter. Drove a short way to the studio that he was using at the time, Gyms on VHS, 5 Folds, and we shot in that white room. Right then after, I remember asking Tony right after that shoot, I was like, why don't do you not make any money off of this? And he was like, oh no. And I was like, why don't you monetize it? He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I remember going there, and I'm not a technologically like advanced person, especially back then. This was 2017, 2016, something. I remember going there. He pulled up the settings on his little YouTube thing, and I was like, it's right there. I was like, just click it. Just click the monetize thing. And then and then he was like, he clicked on it and was like, cool, yeah. And I was like, yeah, just keep the money for, whatever amount of time, pay yourself back for all the shooting. Because we had just, he had a camera. We'd started shooting, I think, like 6 years before that. We did a video coming down. We had done, we just did things randomly.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything serious. Like, he had a company name. It had always been Gyms on VHS, but it wasn't something that I don't think he took exceptionally seriously, and I certainly didn't take it seriously. And there also, that was really the origin of that takeaway video format coming into light. Yeah. Like, Gyms was really laid that platform, and I think between 1 and 2 years later, they had released a video with Sierra very shortly afterward, and then that popped off, and then it was like, oh, this is a really good way to like promote music and promote art, and it's a direct relationship with the fan base. We're kicking out all these money grabbers, and now there are so many avenues for doing that. We live in I don't know if this is true right now. It seems like the institutions are getting kind of back set up again. We just went through a few years of hard hitting, a free for all, I call it. So this era I would also call a free for all. All of a sudden it was like, oh, if you just put out like a decent looking video of you just playing a song, oh my God, this works. I think but that was like kind of the first incarnation of that. And then TikTok came around, and then so it's been a free for all again. And now kind of and we're in Music Row right now. The monsters around here are finally kind of getting their claws back. They're like, okay, we've got X, Y, and Z into record deals. We've got this person with WME finally, after pushing them away.
Right.
I think they're gaining some control back. They're figuring out the tricks to get their claws in. But I think it's a constant pendulum swing.
Yeah.
You know. But I'm very it's neat to look back in time and be like, and now be able to see like that shoot and that moment was the beginning of so much for. It's not even about me anymore. It's about a generation of people.
Right.
It's like you look at the generation of songwriters we have now. Even people who are not even necessarily young on the scale of things going on anymore. People like Sam Barber and Wyatt Flores were heavily influenced by me and Drayton Farley and
right.
Matt Heckler, Sierra, and people from that original movement. And now those guys have inspired a whole generation. Now it's like, I think of it, I was thinking about it the other day. I think about it in reference to sports. It's like 20 years ago. Having Steph Curry just blew everyone's mind. It was like, holy shit, this guy can hit a three-point shot from anywhere in any condition at any range. Now, basically the entire shooting guard program is built around that.
Yeah.
It's like there's now 32 guys in the NBA on every single team that can do. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit. There's at least 15 guys in the NBA now that can shoot like that regularly, and it's no different than like art is not that different. It's like when I was coming up in this flavor of music. This was extremely unique. I would have told you 10 years ago, I'm the best fucking songwriter living right now. And I was a cocky son of a bitch, and I had to be to eat. But now, like this past year especially has humbled me, where it's like, there's a kid in just about every damn town in this country, small town, with a guitar and a decent voice that can write a song that'll rip your heart out.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's not special anymore, but it's not because it's not a special thing. It's because each generation takes the lessons of the past generation and internalizes them quicker and quicker and quicker. Same thing with sports. It's like,
yeah. Well, we're going to take a break for just a second, and we will be right back.
I guess to wrap up that last point, there are so many incredible songwriters now. It has certainly humbled me at this point in my career and in my life where I don't have the same goal that I used to. If you'd asked me 2 years ago, my goal was to be the greatest songwriter in American history. Mm-hmm. That was to be known and notarized as that. Now I don't think that's an achievable goal, and I think some of that comes with wisdom, just getting older, and I'm really at that turning point. Mm-hmm. Once you start getting into your mid-30s, I think a lot of things kind of ding, and at least they did in my brain. They might have already happened to you. You might be more mature and smarter than I am. But now I'm like, I could never achieve that. There are guys who are 20 years old who can write better, or not better, as good as me. And if they're 20 writing as good as I am now, there's no fucking way I'm going to keep up with them in the long run. And what they're going to do between 20 and 30 is going to eclipse everything that I did, in my career. And they're going to learn those lessons quicker in general. But
well, some people are crazy. Like we had Bobby Braddock on, and Bobby, wrote "He Stopped Loving Her Today" and DIVORCE. He had a number one hit in 5 separate decades. I'm like, how do you even do that? That is insane to me. How does the guy who wrote "He Stopped Loving Her Today" also write "God is Great, Beer is Good, and People are Crazy" in 2008 or whatever year it was?
I had never put that together. That is incredible.
Yeah,
that is fucking awesome.
Yeah, so crazy. He started out playing piano for Marty Robbins, and then writes "Golden Ring" and DIVORCE and all these hit songs. I'm like, And Bobby, he's a fantastic guy, but I don't know how he does it. It's just he's got that mind, I guess, that he can. I asked, it's on the podcast, but I asked him how you do that. I said, how do you write a number one in 5 separate decades? He said, well, I get in the car and listen to what's on the radio, and I'll try to write something for the artist that I'm hearing. He said, and I'm always listening to the new stuff. He said, my favorite song right now is My Humps by Fergie. Here's an 80-something-year-old songwriter listening to My Humps, and I died laughing, but he's a character. But yeah, some of those guys, they just, a God-given gift is all I can say. I don't know how else they're able to do it.
Yeah, and then, there's a big split between songwriters and I don't like any of the terminology. I don't like the term singer-songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the term folk music. I don't like a lot of terms, but they're more, that's more derivative of being from here, that you're averse to them. But there's also such a difference in being a performer and being a songwriter that's pitching songs. I think I'm moving more in the direction of songwriting and more of that classic Nashville sense.
Right.
Just being a songwriter. Because like I said at the beginning of this, I guess to bring it around, I don't know if I'm honest with the public, if I'm honest with myself. I think, the bottom line, I am not as good of a person when I'm on the road performing,
mm-hmm.
promoting a record. I'm not as good of a husband. I'm not as good of a son. I'm not as good of a friend. And the older I get, that matters to me more.
Yeah.
So it's not that, and I'm not saying I'm never going to get on the road again because I'm an asshole when I'm on the road, but it does mean that my time on the road is going to be much shorter and it's going to be much more calculated, because it's much more important to me that I'm a good husband than, that I made some people dance. Like,
yeah.
That becomes less important, and especially if you look at, like, as you know, the history of country music and artists that have destroyed so many relationships and good things in their life over the honky-tonk dream. It's not worth it at the end of the road. It's really not. I know that's not what people want to hear either.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's great advice. It's the truth. And like you said, anybody could pick up a book and read any of their heroes' stories and see that, hey, these guys had some rough times and did some rough things, and a lot of broken families and relationships. And so you had said that one of your goals at one point in time was to be the greatest songwriter ever. It sounds like now your big goals is to get the most out of the home life as you can get. What other aspirations do you have for the future? Is there any big goals that you want to get to, or?
If I could get if I could get the buildings on my property to stop leaking, I would be satisfied with that.
That's a great goal. That sounds like me.
And more than that, my goal in life is to more than anything is to be the husband that my wife deserves.
Mm-hmm.
She invested a lot of years in a really shitty person, and I owe her that. But yeah, my property is an absolute disaster. Not happy about it. And that's its own headache, because I have 400 acres and a cabin and 20 trucks and dozers and excavators and dump trucks and tractors, and everything's broken, everything leaks.
Yeah.
Things leak in, things leak out. It is. I'm So I could be extremely upset about it. I'm learning how to just more and more be like, well, God has a plan. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, could be a good thing, could be a bad thing.
It's like, why the fuck am I the only person who has a leaking roof all the damn time?
Well, I'm here to tell you, Ben, you're not. I'm still recovering from Hurricane Laura we had in 2020.
Really?
Come through. It was, most of the news outlets call it a Category 4, but it was really a Category 5. It was the strongest hurricane Louisiana saw since like the 1800s. And we stayed for it because, like, if you don't stay for it, like if the young men don't stay behind, help's not coming. You know, if the young men don't stay behind and you're waiting on the government to come do something, well, good luck. So all of us, it's kind of what we do down in Louisiana. If you're a young, able-bodied man, even the old men, you got to stay behind. And when the winds die down, go out there and start cutting trees out of the road. You know, that's what we do. But yeah, my roof is still leaking from Hurricane Laura, so you're not alone on that. I still got stuff to fix from that hurricane.
Bro, I've got a 50-foot long set. Well, it's 50 by 25 section of roof that is a 1.712 pitch. So you know what that is if you've been
not
building.
Much.
And it was standing seam because I originally we were off grid in Kentucky, so I had an 8 kilowatt solar panel system, drilled a well, yada yada. I've changed that now because it's a pain in the ass, and all these motherfuckers are lying to everyone. There is not energy capability storage. They are so full of shit. I have been through so many fucking lithium, AGM, goddamn batteries. Fucking eat my ass, fucking burn diesel, baby. But I'm going to retain the system, but I'm going to put it out in the yard. But it fucked my whole roof up.
Yeah.
And, I didn't pay attention when the roof was built. Metal roof is not, the steepest it's rated classic rib, I think is 2. It's 212 is the absolute fucking, and you're taking a risk there.
Yeah.
And the other slope, I think how many feet? It should be a 12. So it's real steep, and then it hits that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, dude, I'm fucked. I'm fucked. I don't know what to do. It has been leaking for years. I already took the solar panel system down, and I have been in the process of redoing the roof, and I begged someone else to do it before the rain season came, and just met up. Which our rain season comes typically mid-December. That's when I call the rain season, from December through the end of February, basically, where it's just the ground is soaked. You can't do any dirt work. You can't do any, like, nothing happens. But dude, I've just been miserable. Because like a lot of men, if you're a useful man anyway, all you do is look around for things that are wrong. That's half your life. All you do, you walk into a room, the first thing that your mind does, it's unconscious. It's one of those socialized habits. It's like, oh, that's not flush. Yeah, that cabinet up there, it's not flush right there. You can see it.
Yeah.
See, they didn't set that. Yeah. It's like, it's just dumb, but like you just see every little, it's like, oh, they didn't meet this linoleum correctly right there.
Yeah.
You know, you just look at, so I can't exist with a bunch of broken stuff around me, and that's all I have. I have 10 broken down trucks and like. Yeah.
Yeah, you can ask my wife. When we got to this hotel room, I used to do tile work in Montana, high-end tile work, and I walked in the bathroom and I was like, this wouldn't have flew where I was working. That's exactly what we do. Walk in, no, whoever did this did it.
Exactly.
But to bore people with a little bit of construction talk here for a second, what is your 1-on-12 pitch over? Is that over a room or is that a port?
That's my garage. So it's 1.712. So it's, obviously just below the threshold of what would be considered code for a classic rib. But this is standing seam too. So I think standing seam would typically register at 312.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. I don't know.
I was hoping he was going to say it was over a porch or something where, you could just lower the posts on one side and bring your pitch down some. But if it's over a garage, you're in a predicament.
Oh, I'm okay. I just built a shop, and I contracted the concrete. They dug they dug down 8 inches. Probably the people that did this are going to watch this podcast. I don't give a fuck. They dug down 8 inches. They poured the concrete below the grade outside on 3 sides. So I got a brand new fucking shop that I just fucking built. Doesn't even have electrical in it. Yeah. It's flooding because I trust people. I saw it when they did it. I was like, man, you must have some drainage plan. And it gets done, and I'm like, you see all this fucking water? And they're like, oh, you need to put some skirt drains. I'm like, who the fuck is going to pay to put skirt drains in concrete when you could have just not dug down? There was already fucking gravel here. Put gravel on top of it. Make it 20 feet in the air. Just don't dig down.
Well, they promised you a 4-inch slab, Ben. They didn't tell you how deep in the ground it was going to be.
Oh my god, dude! I could lose it because that's the thing. Is like I would pay someone. I'll pay you twice the money not to deliver me a problem. All I want in life, I tell people all the time, and this is probably a dumb thing to tell people you're doing business with. I say I got plenty of money. I don't have any fucking time. So I want it done right.
Yeah.
I don't care what it costs. Just fucking. If there's a fucking problem, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah.
I will kill somebody. Like.
Yeah, that is crazy though. We put a slab below grade.
I forget sometimes that we're actually recording this.
Yeah, people who are still listening at this point is like, what are we doing here? No, I guess we should get back to the music. You've talked a lot about Sierra, and y'all just recently did a duet together. Congratulations to her, by the way. 4 Grammys I think she just won, which is incredible. So, what's it like working with her? How long have you known Sierra? And
I have known Sierra since my early 20s. We used to bus together. All coast to coast, really. I remember busking with her in Seattle. We used to I found a set list the other day in one of my banjo cases. That was our set list. It was like 7 songs. It actually had Chitlin Cooking Time that she still does today.
Uh-huh.
We used to play that one in D minor. We used to do a lot of backup vocals. Me and Sierra have been good friends for many years. We've come from sort of we come from the same places. She's actually, out of everyone that I have to relate to generally, Sierra's the only person that can understand certain parts of the way that I see the world and the way that from the vantage point of where I am now.
Right.
Because we both came from the same place and we're kind of going in the same direction. Obviously, she has exploded and surpassed me in many, many ways, and that's because she is an extremely hard worker. And she has absolutely clawed her way to the top, and she deserves it. But, we were close friends for many years, still are. I talked to her. I actually accidentally sent her a message when she was at the Grammys. I had no idea because I'd been that was when I'd been going through the therapy stuff, and I'd gotten out and I'd written a song, and so I sent her the song and sent her a message. I was like, I would love to cut this one together. And then the next day, I got back on the internet for the first time in like I don't know, a week or so. And I was like, oh, she was at the fucking Grammys. Okay. I was like, I feel bad. I talked to her a couple days later. I was like, yeah, I'm sorry for bothering you when you're in LA doing the fucking Grammys. But, we were both strung out, dope sick, homeless, crazy. I could say a lot.
Yeah. Well,
But,
it's really you guys are like the American dream. I mean, you took being homeless and busking out on the street, and both of y'all being at the points that y'all are at now is, I think that gives a lot of hope to a lot of people, and to be able to say that you went from one level all the way up to where you are now is just incredible. It really is.
I'm so proud and excited for her in general, and where we came from. Actually, what came up in that was in the therapy. But Sierra's the only person I've ever put a gun to the head of. I don't know why that related, but actually I told her I'd give her that gun, so I will get you that gun, Sierra. Don't worry. I still have it. Not that I guess matters. That was a part of the. Why did that come up in therapy? Oh yeah, never mind. I can't tell why that came up in therapy because it has to do with someone. Never mind. Oh, everything is so dark. You start talking about the past, like I don't even know what
Yeah.
But I'm so proud of her and how far we both have come. And what I tell her generally, she will go as far as she wants to go.
Right.
And she has to define that line for herself. And I try to encourage every artist in this community to think in those terms. It's not specific to her. It's not specific to me. But when you're tying in the mental health thing with other artists in the community in general, we have to define what's too much for us. We have to define what's enough. We have to define what's too many dates. Because if you're hoping that your manager or your booking agent is going to do that for you, they're not. So I really encourage people in general to take the time you need for yourself.
Yeah.
And the opportunity will be there. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see, going back to what we were saying earlier, you were saying some folks doing 150 dates.
That's nothing too. A full year for a lot of these folks is like 250.
Wow.
Is like really running the gambit. Like 150 is kind of an easier. I think, if I remember correctly, I heard Charlie Crockett was planning on doing 150, and that's a slow year for him. And I was like, that motherfucker.
That's almost every other day. That's almost every other day. That's crazy.
It's crazy to me because but then again, I have a different. I made different deals young.
Mm-hmm.
I published a lot of music when I was young, and I retained all the rights to all my music.
Yeah.
So what I retain in my assets, like my liquid assets, money I have coming in publishing every month, is probably relative to someone double my size, because I have never split the pot in my career.
Yeah.
I signed a licensing deal with 30 Tigers at the onset of these last two records.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just a 3-year license. It's just for them to promote the music pretty much.
Yeah.
But before that, I had never shared $1 with anyone. So a lot of these people, they do have to run. I don't think Sierra doesn't. People like Charlie don't. But people who are still building that may seem big to you or even to me, none of us know what the deals are.
Yeah.
You know? Like they could easily be walking away with $500 a show and not even know it. I know that's the other problem in the industry is the just general bringing in all these young people so quickly.
Mm.
It's like, well, who's watching their deals? Who's watching this?
Right.
Do they know how much money they're netting for each of these shows and how it's being split? Who's managing all of that? And especially for these kids underage, I have no idea. I have no clue what goes on with that.
Yeah.
But even the young guys, it's probably worse for the guys who are not underage, because if they're underage, at least their parents have to look at it and sign it. But if you're over the age of 18, half these kids, I mean, shit, they spend half their life on Twitter. You think you put a piece of paper in front of them, they're not going to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, kids up and down this street we're on right now signing deals and getting $1 million the next day that they think is theirs, and they have to pay it back and in debt up their ears, and they're paying it back at the record label's getting 90% of what they bring in, and they're getting 10%, and that 10% is paying it back. It's tough, and that's why I think guys like you are so smart, because you've for the most part stayed completely independent and not signed these deals that is just a bank loan, really.
Yeah, and well, I didn't do it because I was smart. It was because I was stubborn, which worked out.
Yeah.
But and I've also seen it work. I know people right now that have signed one album deals for a 10-year license, which sounds like a bad deal, I guess. But anything sounds like a bad deal around here. It wouldn't matter what wouldn't matter, like a music or like anyone offering you a deal, it's got to be in their favor. Why the fuck would they give it to you? But I have given some critical advice. I have people come to me for advice all the time in general, but specifically about music industry stuff, contract stuff. And I'm not the best guy to come to, but sometimes the situations can work in your favor.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, if you're signing one album, that's good for a lot of reasons. On a 10-year license, it may seem like you're just throwing things away, but after that one record, you get to keep that brand and that momentum. So let that label work for you, and then the day after it drops, go drop an independent record.
Yeah.
And make that money back, because you still got your brand. You've still got all the equity that you built into yourself and that brand.
Right.
And I was like, if you don't want to cut another record with them, whatever. But
yeah.
So there's kind of two scales to it, and then I've seen the other side of things where people right off the bat, young kids sign, 5 record deals.
Yeah.
Where they have to produce 5 albums over the course of XYZ, and it's awful. And they may as well just move to Australia and start pigeon farming.
Yeah.
And disappear.
Yeah.
I don't know if pigeon farming's in Australia.
Some of the best advice I've gotten was from Gary Gentry, who wrote The Ride and The One I Loved Back Then, 1959, a bunch of songs. He told me one day, he says, "Son, this town has 1,000,000 rhinestones, but very few diamonds, so be careful what you pick up."
Yeah. And
I thought that was fantastic, because there are people who will come to you and promise. They come to me, I'm not even an artist. They'll promise you if you sign this deal with us for the next 6 months, we'll get you here, 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 and here, and you just have to pay us this amount per month. And they have no way of knowing that they can get me any or you or anybody any of the things that they're promising you. Yep. They just want that check coming in. So, yeah, be very careful for any of you aspiring creatives listening what you're picking up. There's a lot of rhinestones.
Yeah, and now in the industry, it's also like we're doing half the work for the label to begin with, because the social media industry does half the work. Mm-hmm. Because used to, let's say, 70s, 80s, a manager or label would go pick someone out of a radio station or, down the street at Roberts. Mm-hmm. They just go and see something that they liked, thought was marketable. Now that game's gone. They want something that's proven.
Yeah.
And social media is the perfect avenue to do that, minus a couple key factors like learning crowd presence. Like I can tell it was a couple years ago when this was really igniting, the whole TikTok thing. Americana Fest happened, and I watched so many shows, and I said some controversial things. I gave my fucking opinion as someone born and raised in Music City about some of these artists who were not tested on the stage and how it's not good for them and how it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for them. It's weird for the crowd.
Right.
Because you may have 20 million views on TikTok for a song. Doesn't mean that you can work a crowd. Doesn't mean that you can get up and lead a band. Does not mean that you know how to deal with a heckler. Does not mean you know how to deal with a malfunction with a piece of your equipment on stage and how to smooth it over with the crowd and the fucking production manager and everything else. Doesn't mean you know shit about that. But I had gotten online. I was like, some of these people on some of these stages in Nashville with this new revolution in country music don't need to be there. And people whatever threw a fit about it, and I didn't have to do anything. I chose to do a secondary video, but that kind of revealed itself full scale in that moment with like. I'm really lucky that I got to spend years and years on the street. Well, exactly, to bring it back to what you said originally. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. Everything that happened on Lower Broad from the age of 13 and then spanning every city in the country and every highway I stuck my thumb out of and every freight train I jumped on, built me into the person to be capable to deal with what I deal with now,
right?
And to raise my threshold. So I guess I also don't need to judge people, but I don't know. The older I get, I don't really give a shit about anyone's feelings unless you're my wife. I really don't like fuck your feelings. I don't care at all if your feelings are hurt by something that I say. Piss on you. I don't care. Life is short. Go listen to someone else.
Well, if you're in the position with social media today, I tell people don't ever read comments. You'll never please everybody. I could make a video that's just the nicest, sweetest video I could ever make. I could make a video about Red Savine and how great of a musician he was, and there's going to be somebody who's, oh, you're full of it, dude, blah 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 blah. Or I got called an industry plant one time, and I'm like, "What are you even talking? What industry are you even talking about?" He said, "You're faking the way you talk and everything." I'm like, "Dude, I'm from South Louisiana. I'm from the sticks. So what are you talking about?"
I'm so done having conversations like that with people where like we live in such, like I was saying, the symbolic vision of yourself. And we also live amongst so much of what you're talking about. We come from the reality TV generation.
Yeah.
Where stuff like, what's that? The Duck Dynasty people.
Yeah.
And people, that I love and are very close to. Like, I love that show. Oh, it's real now. And it's like, well, fuck. No, it's not. But people have a skewed view of what reality is.
Yeah.
Because we come from a generation of symbolic viewership. It's hilarious stuff like that. Like, you can't be real. How? How do you think this archetype came to be if it never existed?
Right.
It didn't ferment out of the bowels of nothing. What the fuck are you talking? Like, yeah, someone like me has existed, and that's someone probably raised me. That is the archetype that you're thinking of, or was in proximity to me. It's like the same thing.
Yeah. People are. There are certain people in the world that I think they're kind of miserable, so they want to drag. For lack of a better word, they want to drag you down to their level and make you miserable too. So, yeah, don't read comments.
and also, I think that there's just which I'm certainly not going to get into politics, but there's certainly a split consciousness in the country in general. We have half the population lives in metropolitan areas, and they have different needs, and they need to cooperate with each other more, and they need more oversight and regulation, and they need to make sure, because you have so many people concentrated, that the weakest among those people or the most marginalized need to be protected, and this, that, and the other. If you're in the country, it's the complete opposite. Mm-hmm. The rules are complete. It's not that the rules are wrong in New York City. It's that you can't use them in rural Kentucky or rural Louisiana. They don't fucking matter.
Yeah.
Like they don't sustain civilization there.
Yeah.
It's like, what sustains civilization there, what works is personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Like, what works is you provide for yourself, and the government is fucking useless.
Yeah.
Like, that's what works where we live.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's hard when someone, yeah, exactly. Here's an accent like yours who lives in, Portland, Oregon. Like, of course they don't fucking believe you exist.
Yeah.
Why would they?
Yeah.
They have no concept.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that the government's useless. That ties into what I said earlier about having to stay during a Category 5 because help ain't coming. You got to get out there and do it yourself.
Oh, it's worse than help isn't coming. In every disaster that's happened that I have been acquainted with in any regard, FEMA and every federal agency has stood in the way of help. There are people that, well, I know for a fact people died in, I don't want to get into specifics because I don't want to get, doesn't matter. But I know that people died in multiple tragedies in the Southeast by my own personal knowledge and watching, where people were stopped from going in for rescue.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not like days later, within 48 hours, FEMA coming in and being like, we got to block this area off, it's dangerous. And I was like, do you hear that scream? Like, these people are fucking sick.
Yeah.
Fuck FEMA.
Yeah, I agree. Down in Louisiana, we had the Cajun Navy. They popped up. I think it might have been before Laura, but the floodings come in and stuff. The government wasn't coming in. It was some Cajuns on John boats going in and saving people.
Oh yeah, it was the same thing in Kentucky. I think, did they come up from Louisiana? The mule brigades.
Could have been. Yeah, there's several of those little organizations, and they're just people going to help people.
Well, you couldn't traverse so much of where the rescue efforts needed to go in Appalachia. And I'm pretty sure it was from Louisiana, or maybe I'm just making that up now. But people came from somewhere near the Gulf. It was either Louisiana and Texas. Groups of people riding mules.
Yeah.
To go get supplies and medical help, and that who knows how many lives that saved.
Yeah.
You couldn't get there on a fucking 4-wheeler.
Yeah.
You couldn't get there by any means. Maybe crawling.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the cool thing about folks. You really see, you might not talk to your neighbor for 5 years, but a hurricane comes through and everybody's hand in hand. Yeah. I was down there with a chainsaw cutting trees, and my 85-year-old neighbor was on his Kubota, and we dragging trees out so our families could get back. And then we're out of electricity for 6 weeks. It's probably about week 2, I'd say. Maybe week 1, but probably closer to week 2 before we see the Red Cross and FEMA and stuff start to actually come in. It's because we cleared the roadways. Now they can come in and bring MREs and all that stuff. But that's exactly right. I think people from the rural areas really have a sense of community and helping people out.
Well, it's funny the way that the federal government works. It's like, well, it's like, and I'm going to offend some musicians here too. I don't give a shit. It's like the difference in playing with someone who's a fiddler from rural Appalachia and a fiddler who was trained at Berkeley College of Art. These federal organizations, FEMA and just general emergency response stuff, they know what the textbook says you're supposed to do.
Right.
That's not common sense. They're showing up to an area, they have no damn clue. They don't know Miss Johnson lives by herself 2 miles up the road on the left, but the driveway's not marked, and she's got to have medication every 24 hours. or she'll die.
Right.
They don't fucking know that. They have no idea. So they come in, they're like, all right, we're just going to close the area off for 48 hours. It's like, how many fucking people you think you can die in that 48 hours? The only people that know are the people that live in that community. So it's like,
yeah,
it's a mistake of arrogance. It's also, I mean, just piss on them. Just piss on all of it. Oh my God. I can't get started too deep down here, or I'll say something highly offensive. And then they'll cancel me. Is canceling a thing anymore?
I don't think so. I think that's gone with the past.
We say that immediately. Immediately this is posted. We're both canceled. Our wives leave us both. We become gay carnies.
We'll go hop some trains anyway.
Exactly, as gay carnies. But I think we should probably get off here.
Yeah, we talked about everything from the music to train hopping to construction to natural disasters. So I guess we can wrap it up now. But you want to tell folks where they can find you and where they can keep up with what you got going on next?
I'm on OnlyFans. No, I'm not. I'm Benjamin Todd. What was it? What do I need to tell them?
Where they can find you and keep up with you, and maybe upcoming shows. And
you don't want to find me. I'm not playing shows. I don't know what to say. I'm not doing anything. I'm literally doing nothing.
Well, you're on Instagram, and I'm assuming YouTube and TikTok and all those platforms. You can go follow.
I don't know if I'm on TikTok. I don't know.
Maybe not. We'll get... I
don't run it.
Somewhere on social media, you can find Ben Todd. You definitely find him on YouTube and Instagram, and keep up there. And when that new album's coming out, I'm sure you'll have it released on your Instagram and stuff.
Yes, and I've got a honky tonk record to prolong this. Mm-hmm. I've got a honky tonk record. Hopefully, I think Shooter's going to produce it. Shooter Jennings.
Oh, that'd be great.
I'm hoping to record in the middle of this year, and then I'll have another more folk record. So I've got a bunch of music. I'm taking the year off to deal with it.
Yeah,
yeah. Because I don't know how people do it either. Like Charlie and all these guys, they're also Charlie, Zach Bryan, all these motherfuckers. They're also putting out 30 tracks a year.
Yeah.
And getting in the studio and doing. I'm like, how do you do that? I didn't have time to do anything last year. I released 23 tracks, and I did like 60 dates. I didn't have time to do anything else. So that's a big reason, particularly.
Yeah.
It's like I got to take the time off. I'll be back in 2026.
Yeah. Take the time to focus on the music. So yeah, just go over to Ben's Instagram and follow along for that, and get more news on when that stuff's coming out. And Ben, we're just so happy you came out and came on the show, and we appreciate you. And I'm sure we'll sit down again together one day and talk about some more natural disasters and construction. Maybe by then we'll have all of our leaks fixed anyhow.
Apparently, you're beating me on your leak. So now I kind of feel better. So you said 2020?
Yeah.
Damn. Wait. No, I've had a leak that long too. Never mind. I don't feel better about anything. This made me feel worse.
We appreciate you, brother.